Why did Central African Republic's United Nations peacekeeping mission head resign? Why did UN Secretary General KiMoon accept General Babacar Gaye's resignation? How are these developments likely to impact the United Nations' credibility? Who is mandated to monitor the UN troops' conduct upon entering a country? What time is it? It is question time. Welcome to Question Time. My name is Mpho Tselu. The head of the United Nations peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic, Babacar Gaye, has been forced to resign. This follows the UN forces handling of a number of alleged human rights violations, including sexual abuse. For a part, Amnesty International Senior Crisis Response Advisor Joanne said they welcomed the United Nations' swift and emphatic response to the allegations. This after UN Secretary General KiMoon accepted General Gaye's resignation. A reminder that this is a live program and therefore you can call us and air your views. The numbers to dial 089 110 4210. If you're outside the borders of South Africa, 002789 1104210. Our Twitter handle is @QuestionTime24. My guest today is Isaac Homu, who is a producer of Spotlight Africa on Channel Africa here at the SABC. And on the line, we have Joanne, who is a Senior Crisis Response Advisor at Amnesty International. Welcome to the show. We also welcome you, ma'am. Who is Babacar Gaye?
Babacar Gaye is a brigadier general, or brigadier. He's Senegalese. He's in the Senegalese army, but he's also a specialist in peacekeeping. He has actually, before being taken to CAR, he had served as the head of the forces in DRC. And I'm lucky in the sense that at the last just finished AU conference, he was here and had the honor of actually interviewing me. And today, after hearing that he's resigning, I phoned him and I did talk to him.
Okay. Yeah. And the scandal which has rocked the United Nations peacekeeping mission, this is not a first accusation labeled against peacekeeping forces. And it is actually a very common practice amongst militias.
Well, it's not militias. I actually sort of did ask him about that. So it's not the first time that peacekeepers have been accused of sexual abuse.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about what's happening in the DRC, which is even worse than what is happening here. It is happening in Burundi.
Yes.
And if you can go onto the internet, you'll find that all UN missions, Bosnia, in Europe, they've actually had cases of sexual abuse of the needy. And it's a power thing where people, the forces, they've got the facilities, they're well catered for, and the people are really starving. Yeah. But then this case is very tricky because it became a case of sexual abuse when the French forces were first accused of actually sort of sexual abuse. And in that case, it was even bad because it was pedophilic abuse. And this French forces, they've been identified, they were actually sort of sodomizing young boys as young as 10 years old. Yeah. But then I did put it forward to Babacar about the French forces. He says, well, it's true about the French forces, but they were not in, he couldn't do anything, or the UN could not do anything.
Yes.
Because at that time, the French forces were not blue-beretted. In fact, they were not under the jurisdiction of the UN. But again, with that, you find that basically there's much more involved than just a case of abuse, because he is the head of the mission. And these abuses are carried out by military men. They've got a military command. And with such a thing, the person who's actually got to be taken responsibility is head of the army.
Yes.
Yeah? He's the head of the army. He's the head of the mission, overall mission, and he's the chief representative of Ban Ki-moon. Yeah, but then he said that, well, he agreed, he has resigned as under collective responsibility.
Okay. Joanne Marina, just talk to us about this particular case of this 12-year-old, which actually put this particular subject on the international map and has claimed the head of the mission itself.
Yeah, we've been documenting the case over the past little more than a week. What happened was UN peacekeeping forces, and it was specifically a police contingent that belongs to the peacekeeping forces in the Central African Republic, were carrying out a raid on a house looking for some criminal suspects. And a number of people live in the house and in the family compound, and one of the children, a little girl aged 12 years old, was terrified when the raid was happening, and she ran and hid in the bathroom. All of the other women and children were brought into a room together, but she was apparently found by a peacekeeper who dragged her outside, brought her to a far corner of the compound where they were hidden by trucks. It was a fairly large compound, and raped her there. We've interviewed her. We brought her to a hospital, and she was examined by a nurse who found physical evidence indicating rape, physical and psychological evidence. We also documented a case of indiscriminate killing the following day, where peacekeeping troops returned to more or less the same area, and according to witnesses, were shooting rather aggressively without, not in crossfire, but really just, quite aggressively and indiscriminately. And they killed a 61-year-old truck driver who was unarmed and not involved in any kind of political actions, and his 16-year-old son who ran outside when his father was hit to try to help him.
Okay.
So these are shocking cases.
Do we know the country from which the forces come or are seconded from?
We don't know which countries the particular people who carried out these acts are from. We do know that in general in these operations there were forces from Cameroon, Rwanda, and I think possibly from Congo.
Yes. Now, in as much as you have welcomed the decision by Babacar Gaye to resign, have you also noticed, or rather noted, that he was actually forced to resign? It's not like it was a voluntary thing on his part.
I think, as the previous speaker was indicating, this isn't about Babacar Gaye as an individual. He's really being held responsible as a representative of the Secretary General who's in charge of the UN mission in the Central African Republic. And it reflects a series of allegations, very credible allegations of abuse by troops in the Central African Republic. So, and I think also it's really worth underscoring that this problem is not at all limited to the Central African Republic. It's a chronic problem that's afflicted peacekeeping troops in more than 11 countries. So I think, essentially this was the last straw for the Secretary General, and he's made a point of trying to take decisive action. But I wouldn't personalize it and say, this reflects the fault of Babacar Gaye as an individual.
Okay. Now, Dr. Kum, if this is not confined to the Central African Republic, it means it's happening all over. Why are we not hearing about the other cases?
The cases have been reported. It's taking place in Haiti. And in fact, in Haiti, there's rapes, there are a lot of prostitution. It's taking place in the Congo DRC. It's been well reported. It's taking place in Burundi, where even South African forces have been accused of actually being party to this action. Yes. It's been reported. It's only that people have not actually sort of taken note of it. It's only now that a high-profile official of the UN, who has been actually forced to resign, that people are noting it. It's happened in Bosnia. Yeah, it has happened all over. It's always been happening. Yeah, so, but then again, you find that people are saying that there is more to it than just a case of UN forces misbehaving. There is something political in it, and also there is a case whereby President Hollande of France, when the scandal of the French soldiers broke out, Hollande said that there will be no mercy for those soldiers who were involved. And those people have been found out. And
well, that's what Ban Ki-moon is also saying in this.
But that is after Hollande came with that stance. Hollande came with that stance, I think, some 3-4 months ago.
Okay.
So, I mean, he has set the standard very high. And basically, Ban Ki-moon is supposed to actually get there. But again, there are also, people are saying, because I also talked to our correspondent in Bangui, which is the capital of the CAR, Mosi. In fact, I talked to him about 45 minutes ago, on the situation there. He said that basically the people in CAR welcomed the move of actually moving Babacar, and saying that he was not working well with other workers, with the people of the CAR, who saw him that he was too reluctant. Number one, they say that he was reluctant in actually disarming the rebels. Whereas the UN forces in CAR, they are there under Chapter 9. They've got a Chapter 9 mandate, which is peace enforcing.
Yes.
But they don't seem to be using it. They're not disarming the rebels. And number two, he says that these people are very, very selective in actually criticizing the role and attitude of the French and the French forces. You see, in Central African Republic, there's an accusation that the French were involved in actually arming Saleka. I'm not saying they were involved, I'm just saying that what people are saying on the ground, I'd be accused. And they say that once that has been raised, the role and the conduct of the French, he tended to be very protective of the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah, seeing that he's actually pro-French in a way. And again, there is a known thing that Ban Ki-moon, his plans for Central African Republic, they differ and contradict that of the French. But you can talk about that later.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break, and a reminder that you can call us and air your views. The numbers to dial 089-110-4210. If you're outside the borders of South Africa, the number is 002789-110-4210. Our Twitter handle @QuestionTime24. We shall return.
Your World makes it its business every evening to round up the leading local stories and international news to keep you informed all the time.
Make a date with Your World every evening for all the news headlines around the world to keep you abreast with knowledge.
Catch Your World for headlines across the world every Monday to Friday from 9 p.m, then Saturday and Sunday from 7 p.m.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today, Isaac Khomu, who is a producer of Spotlight Africa on Channel Africa of the SABC. And on the line, Joanne, who is a senior crisis response advisor at Amnesty International. Before we go into our second segment of the show, let us firstly take a look at what Ban Ki-moon had to say.
When the United Nations deploys peacekeepers, we do so to protect the world's most vulnerable people in the world's most desperate places. I will not tolerate any action that causes people to replace trust with fear.
Representative to MINUSCA, Senegalese national Babacar Gaye, resigned after being asked to do so by a UN chief under intense pressure for months about how the UN handles reports of sexual abuse at its missions around the world.
And that was our correspondent from the United Nations there. Malifa, you're calling us from Pretoria.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to put into correct context here that a peacekeeping mission is composed of the military, the police, and the civilian component, with the head, an overall head, being a civilian, or in this case, Babacar Gaye. I had a pleasure of sitting with him in DRC.
Okay.
So just to correct that, it is not necessarily saying it is only the soldiers who perhaps are committing this act of atrocities. We abhor them, we don't like them, and it involves both military, the police, and the civilians. However, what I think Babacar Gaye set a very good example, and your guest made it very clear. It is not him in person who is involved. It's a collective responsibility for those under him who did that, and he's taking responsibility for that. And I think that's a very good thing about him. He's a good soldier. He's a good man. Before he came there, he was sitting in New York as a military advisor to KiMoon, and that's why he was deployed there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thanks indeed for that clarification. Let's come back to this particular point. Today is Central African Republic's Independence Day.
Yeah. Today, 13th August, is CAR, Central African Republic Independence Day. And I was talking to our correspondent, Mosi. He said that the people of Bangui, they've actually, they did not come out. They boycotted the celebration. The people did not come out. The celebrations were attended by the President of Central African Republic, Madame Catherine Samba Panza, and also the French ambassador. Now, he said that people never did so because they're unhappy about the role of the French, and they look at the French ambassador to Central African Republic as being the president of the CAR, and President Panza, they're looking at her as being the governor of CAR. So they say that the whole situation, the government, is being dominated by the French. So many people boycotted the celebrations today. They were accusing Babacar of actually being also pro-French. Now, I don't know how far true that is.
Joanne, I'm not so sure if you would be operating in that political space or to that extent, but are you finding the influence of the French government perhaps too obvious to ignore in the operations around the Central African Republic's conflict?
Well, I mean, I guess you have to look at the situation in the Central African Republic in historical context. It's a former French colony, and as with many former French colonies, France has been very active in terms of, close relationships with various governments. French support can make or break a government. Many people feel that President Jatodia, who was the president until January 2014, stepped down essentially because of French pressure kind of, put through the Chad government, Deby. So, the French clearly have a lot of interest in the Central African Republic, and within the country, their role is quite controversial. And certainly some, particularly the Muslim community, I think there are members of the Muslim community that are quite critical of the French role.
Okay. Now, this MINUSCA, or the UN Multidimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission, has been there since 2014, early 2014, Joanne. Was this the first incident that you came across?
No, I mean, there are incidents dating back to December 2013. As you mentioned, MINUSCA was established in September 2014, but it's basically just a rehatting of the previous African Union mission. which started in December 2013. And in fact, that mission is just a rehatting of a mission by the regional grouping. So there's actually been peacekeepers in the Central African Republic for quite a long time. And apparently there are at least 11 complaints of sexual abuse and exploitation, 4 of which are quite prominent.
And obviously, the reason why they are there is because of this Muslim Silica Alliance and the Antibalaka militias. The Lord's Resistance Army is also still in existence there. Have you reported any mishaps from their side as well?
From the Silica Antibalaka side, or?
Yes.
I mean, I think one point that your audience should learn about, I think that's important to recognize in this context, is that the country really does have an extremely unstable situation. There are armed groups that are, have a lot of power. Antibalaka in the west of the country, the Seleka in the central parts and the east of the country. So the UN peacekeepers, their role is extremely important because the government does not have an effective military or police force. So really it's only the existence of the UN peacekeepers that stops the situation from degrading further.
Okay. Now, like I said, the Silica Alliance and the Antibalaka and the LRA are the reason.
Yeah. The situation is bad. Early in April, it was in April, I did an interview with one of the UN aid workers there, OCHA. Yeah, I could tell the name, but I think it's not wise. And we talked about the situation of women. That interview was just that on the experiences of the women in a war situation.
Yes.
The situation was bad. I mean to say the Saleka, the Antibalaka, they were actually exploiting the women, and actually the women were the most affected, women and children. And again, we talked about the abuse by the UN forces, because in a war situation, you find that aid was not actually reaching the victims fast enough, and these people were beholden to the soldiers, and the soldiers were getting their full ration, and that it developed a powers relation between the soldiers and the general population, and those gross exploitation of women in their situation. I mean, the situation is worse than what it is. It's really very bad. As our speaker from London said, that there's no police force, and the police force is there, is that which is put there by the UN, and they're not sufficient. So basically, it's a dire situation, and the exploitation of women, children, and those who are weak is bad. Like now, people are being forced. Muslim women are being forced to actually change their religion, and issues like that. Things are really bad.
Okay. Joanne, a last one from you, perhaps if I may just take advantage of your presence, for you to just talk to us quickly about the situation in South Sudan.
Okay, well, that's jumping to another extremely dire situation. And, you know, as is well known, there's a civil war, and the level of gender-based and sexual violence in that country is extremely serious. There have been mass rapes of women and girls, and in some cases, women and girls have been executed after being raped. So, you know, that is probably one of the most serious human rights crimes that we're seeing in the entire continent.
Okay. Joanne, thank you very much for your time at home. Thank you also for the time. Indeed.
Thank you for
that was question time for today. A big thank you to my guests and to you for watching the show. From me and the crew, have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.
Welcome to Network, a technology news program that also discusses what's trending in social media in and around Africa. MTN has launched its new movie and television streaming service, Front Row. If it's trending, we will find it. That's Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. only on the SABC News Channel.
When bees and wasps sting a person, they inject a bitterness venom in their skins.
We have about 3 spider species in South Africa that we have to worry about. Button spiders, which include, the black widow spiders, your sac spiders, and your violent spiders.
That venom is in your system, it's in your muscle tissue. And the more your heart beats, the faster your heart beats, the faster the blood is going to circulate, and consequently it's going to get that venom into your system faster.
If you see a snake like this, the best thing to do is to just stay away from it and contact somebody that specializes in removing venomous snakes.
Join me on Health Talk every Saturday morning between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. as we unpack current health stories.
When bees and wasps sting a person, they inject a bitterness venom in their skins.
We have about 3 spider species in South Africa that we have to worry about. Button spiders, which include